the censorship and psychological warfare and cognitive warfare technologies. These represent fundamental threats to human autonomy, sovereignty, and thought. The technology is so powerful, this technology that was designed for offshore combat. Now we have something that is enormously powerful, in large part enabled by the digital landscape, which the CCP defines as another theater of war, just to be clear. And NATO defines as another theater of war: land, sea, air, and cyber. And they have advanced a variety of warfare technologies for use in cyberspace. And I argue that when a government feels that it is acceptable to deploy this technology against their own citizens, the concept of sovereignty and individual autonomy becomes completely obsolete. The technology is incredibly powerful. Cognitive warfare is designed to attack your subconscious. One of the core principles in Psywar, or fifth generation warfare, is that the individual being influenced is completely unaware of who is doing the influencing. It is designed to be subtle, non-transparent, and incredibly effective. As a matter of fact, the highly educated are among the most susceptible, in part because they are trained to accept authority figures. They are trained to assimilate the information they're given, rather than, in most cases, than objectively questioning it. So we're now in an environment where there's no distinction between civilian and combatant, and there are absolutely, it is unrestricted warfare. Anything goes. There are no boundaries. There's no ethics. And when I lecture on this, I start off by speaking of it as a surrealistic landscape. When you become aware, consciously aware of, even at the most simple level, of the technologies involved in cyber and cognitive warfare, what you find is you enter an information landscape where you are unable to discern truth. This is part of why we have entered into a post-truth environment, where truth is whatever the person with the most powerful access to information infrastructure is asserting to be truth. So this gives rise to all of these things about transhumanism, transgenderism, gender reassignment surgery. All of that agenda is a post-truth environment.
One of the tricky things with the nudges is that so many people, and I think it's there's a inverse correlation with the more educated and more letters after your name, people think they're immune. Oh, I'd never fall for marketing. I'd never fall for advertising and nudges. I'm too smart. I probably had that arrogance in my 20s myself. Yet, if that's the case, let's have a look at all these multi-million or billion, is it, advertising companies around the world. What's really key with the nudges and any of the marketing, gambling, psychological use is it all targets the unconscious areas of the brain. It targets the back areas of the brain. It's estimated about 95% of our decision making, just our everyday life, how we go around the world, how we respond to different situations, is mediated from the back part of our brain. So, from unconscious decision making. And those unconscious drivers, which are very, very primal drivers, they're very innate, they actually are, there's different estimates between 200 and I think someone is saying 20,000 times faster and more powerful than our prefrontal cortex. We sort of really reify our prefrontal cortexes, don't we? It's all about who's the smartest kid in class, who can hold the most data. And that's this part of the brain. And it's very, very clever, and it's great for doing maths, and it's great for all sorts of things. But it shuts down when we're stressed. as you know. It goes offline, or it certainly loses a lot of power. And the nudges were all based on that. When we are under extreme stress, our brain and nervous system completely change the way they operate to if we're just sitting in a calm one-on-one situation. And what the body is trying to do is it's trying to ultimately keep us alive. So it takes the brain, it takes the resources away from these newer parts, and it sends them down to the major muscle groups, the legs, the arms, so that we can fight or run away. And people will know that as the fight-flight system. However, in a situation where there is not actually real physical life-threatening danger, it can cause all sorts of problems, because what we ended up with back in 2020, it is 2020 that this all started, isn't it? I get a bit confused.
It is, yeah, it is.
We ended up with all of these families and friends completely divided again back into those sort of football teams, highly intelligent, rational people, people with pre-existing deep connection who were completely separated. And what happened, going back to the brain, so what happens is, if you and I are talking, if you have a different point of view to me, if I'm calm and in that parasympathetic state, I'll say, oh, that's interesting, John. Oh, okay, all right. And then I might go off and have a think about it. But if you are yelling it at me, or it's coming out of a media screen, with the brain goes into the sympathetic arousal, it sends most of the blood down here, and the prefrontal cortex, the range constricts, so you can't hold two conflicting views in space and rationally deal with it. It's very easy for people then to jump on the psychologists that work in the nudge units and say, oh, you know, they're complicit, they're evil, all of these things. But I really do believe the vast majority of them, they're young. They get cherry-picked out of university, they go in, they get given these big salaries, and they think they were doing the right thing. I don't think they were all thinking for one moment that they were trying to manipulate people towards bad ends.
And they were obeying orders and conforming.
Yeah. One of the mistakes that we've made, and I've certainly made it myself, was right back at the start, we would just send all this information to our friends and our family because we wanted them to know what was going on. We would try and send them all this data. But again, when people are highly psychologically defended in the face of a potentially enormous existential threat, they can't process a lot of new data. The most important piece is psychological awareness. Until the whole playbook that they've used is a psychological playbook. And so until people understand the psychology of what's going on, it's really hard to see a way out of this mess. If you grew up in a family or grew up in a country where there was constant conflict, right, then your amygdala is going to be looking out. It's going to be looking out for danger. You're less likely to believe everything you hear. You might have a bit more of a, questioning authority. Children who grow up in traumatic situations, again, they're far more likely to see it than people who are securely attached and had a really easy life in the West. And that is a lot of doctors and a lot of medical work. Not all, but a lot. Yeah.
So a lot of us are essentially pre-programmed to conform, 100%. To be good little citizens.
100%. Yeah. But the thing is, it's like with a magic trick, John. When someone shows you a magic trick, and it can have you absolutely perplexed for hours, when they show you how they do it, it's gone. We need to take the rabbit out of the hat, and we need people to understand how their brains work. We need people to understand, because you catch yourself. I mean, my daughter, who's 14, she talks about it all the time. Oh, okay, they just went into a this, that, or the other state. If you teach it from the start, you don't fall for these things so easily. And if you do, you can pick yourself up quickly. We need everyone to speak up. It's so important. We've come to this crazy place in history where we've never been so divided, where there's huge amounts of trauma going on. But from that, it's almost that we sort of had to hit that horrific place from which people could then start waking up and looking at the psychology, but also the history. It's almost like a raising of consciousness that this is going to bring about. And we all really believe that. And despite everything that's gone on, I'm really excited for the future.